Hey, real quick, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been feeling like your brand needs a little love, but you're not quite sure where to start, I have just the tool you need. The Standout Brand Audit Bot is an AI powered guided audit that shows you exactly what's working, what's not, and how to strengthen your brand using my proven Standout brand system. In 10 minutes or less, you'll walk away with clear next steps to move your brand forward with purpose. It's completely free. Just head to the show notes to grab the link and get started. When I take a vacation or go out to a restaurant, for example, I want to feel super, super taken care of. I want to know that every little detail has been thought of, that I'm not going to have to really do anything, and that it's going to be a really elevated experience that feels like it's running really smoothly. Interestingly, that is also how I want to feel when I'm working with somebody in my business, whether it be a business coach, a service provider, or contractor. The overlap in the hospitality industry and the online business industry is a lot larger than you might think, which is why I'm so excited to have Melissa Rodriguez on the podcast today. She's a small business operations coach and event specialist at One Team Partners, where their mission is to help teams thrive in every available moment. With over a decade in the hospitality industry, Melissa blends hospitality principles with smart operational strategy to help business owners build strong team cultures, avoid burnout, and create sustainable rhythms that actually work. In today's episode, Melissa and I are talking all about how your most important business asset really is the people that you work with, whether that be clients or team members. Welcome to the Six Figure Brand Podcast, where each week we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a six-figure business as an online service provider. I'm your host, Morgan. I'm a branding expert, online agency owner, mom of two, and military spouse, and I'm obsessed with helping entrepreneurs like you understand the ins and outs of branding so that you can use it to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. Whether you're just starting out or focused on scaling, we're diving into everything you need to build a profitable and sustainable online business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Six Figure Brand. I'm so excited to have Melissa here today. She's a small business operations coach and event specialist. Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into online business?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Morgan. Excited to be here. I'm Melissa, and I am exactly what Morgan said. We do small business coaching. My background is actually rooted in hospitality. So I graduated college at Cal Poly Pomona with a degree in hospitality management and spent the first decade of my career working in all things hospitality. So from hotels to then I did a lot on like the venue side in food and beverage and catering. I also worked for the Academy of Country Music, so doing really large scale entertainment events. And so really just spanning the gamut. I am located in Nashville, Tennessee, so moved out here from California after college to make the dream happen. And with part of that dream also comes a significant amount of sacrifice and life. And so after, like I said, just a little over a decade and a pandemic that wiped out our entire industry, I really took a beat to refocus in on what mattered to me. And while hospitality and that career path was it was literally my dream come true and what I thought I wanted to do forever, it also took away from a lot of other places and experiences that I wanted to have. And so I kind of decided that I was going to change my trajectory and pick something new, and just happened to have a kind of a right place at the right time moment, and where I reconnected with my now CEO, Carlo, who was my theater coach in high school. So just a funny full circle moment, and decided to join him on this adventure called One Team Partners in coaching. And I think what's been really unique for me in this experience is that, it's really easy sometimes to think like, oh, I left hospitality, and I try not to ever say it that way, because I feel like I do hospitality every single day, and the coaching that I do, it's just through a very different lens. And it's through a lens that gives me balance and gives me a life outside of the four walls of where I'm working. And so for that, I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a good point that when I think of hospitality, I think of like going to a hotel or a resort or something, not necessarily event planning, but my goal there is like, I'm on vacation, right? I want to not have to worry about anything. I want to feel really well taken care of. I want to feel like it's like a premium experience. And when I think about what do I want out of a business coach, it's all the same things. So it at first thought might seem like a big jump, but I really don't feel like it is at all. So that's what we're going to get into a little more today. How was that transition for you of going from, I assume when you were in hospitality, you had like a boss and sort of a schedule. I would imagine the schedule was a little weird with like events and stuff, but like a lot of structure and like this is your job to, it sounds like you came into someone else's business, but still like entrepreneurship where it's kind of up to you to make the rules. I know a lot of people struggle with that more than they anticipate they will.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was so different. Hospitality, exactly what you said. I had a boss. I showed up. I knew these are the tasks. This is the order that they go in. I have to have all of these things accomplished by this time. I was managing a team at one point of about 50 employees. So it was completely different to then shift into this world, working from home, figuring out all of the pros and cons of that. Most of the work that I do is remote, or virtual, right? So I am on calls with people, which again is very different than literally serving them in a room. So, it was quite a mental transition for sure. But I think, again, leaning into the things that I loved about that job and finding ways to build that. So structure is really something that I thrive in. And that's one thing I loved about that job. And so finding ways to build structure for myself in a job that could be less structured if I wanted to was crucial for me. So things like calendar blocking, figuring out ways to create routines and habits and things that gave me that same sense of structure. I never walked in and sat down and said, what do I want to do today? Like I walked in and knew what I was doing today because I set it up for myself in that way, because that's where I work my best. And so I think it's building the things that will create success for you. And that can happen across the industry. It doesn't matter, right? That's just you figuring that out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's certainly a trap that I fell into whenever I started my business, was like, okay, I had to be at work from 8 to 4:30 and I had like these things I did every day. And so then I was so excited to not have that when I left my 9 to 5 that I swung like way too far in the opposite direction. And exactly like you said, I would wake up and sit down at my desk and be like, okay, what are we doing today? And not a lot of productive work got done. Or I just would like feel really scattered. And it is almost more overwhelming to have like too many choices of what you're going to do with your day. So I love that you brought that up. So talk to us a little bit about like the operations side of what you do, because I feel like it's very easy for us to see how the taking care of your people aspect of like hospitality then translates into working with small businesses. But for somebody who's not familiar with the hospitality industry, I think that we don't know how much like systems and organization and operations go into that. So give us a little peek behind the scenes, if you would.
Well, so to swing back for a second to your point earlier, so I did work in hotels. I have minimal restaurant experience, but food and beverage side. But my bread and butter and where most of my career was spent was in event production. And so when you think about an event from the guest side, the goal is that everything is running smoothly and you are able to just enjoy every second. On the back end, on my side of things, none of that is accidental. It's all extremely planned and organized, sometimes down to the literal minute. And none of that happens without having any sort of structure, right? And so, building operational systems that allow you, so in events, it's typically called a BEO, a banquet event order. And that's what we refer to as like our Bible for the day. And it has everything broken down of, what they're eating, what the order of things are, what time things are happening. And then from that, I'm able to build backwards saying, if we're serving at this time, we need to fill water at this time, we need to set the tables at this time, right? Like I'm building backwards from what the goal is. And so we do a lot of those same things at One Team with our clients. When we're talking about goal setting, we work opposite of what I think a lot of people do. When I ask you like, oh, what's a goal that you're working on? I think people jump into what we refer to more as like tactics or even objectives. And so it's like, oh, my goal is to send 5 emails today. And it's like, okay, well, that's not a goal. Like when I'm asking what your goal is, I want to talk about this high level of my goal is to get 17 new clients this year. Like, okay, well, from that, Now let's work backwards. Let's chunk down. How are we doing that? Well, let's talk about what those strategies are. We're going to, go through. And so we really break it into those levels. And I think that's why I relate so well to it, is because it's the exact same thing that I've done my whole career. Is I'm working from, this is what I'm trying to get to. Now let me backwards pedal to figure out how to make it accessible to do it today. What am I doing right now that feeds into what I'm working towards in a year? And that's very similar.
So that makes a ton of sense. This brought up a really good question for me when you were talking about like, okay, we're going to do this at this time, so I need to then do like XYZ at this time. It instantly brought me back to planning my wedding, which was a wonderful experience that I hope to never, ever do again. But it was a lot of that. It was, okay, well, we want to have cake or dinner at this time, but we need to have time to do like first look photos. And is there going to be a cocktail hour? And like, how do we fill the time and make it so that we do everything we want to do, but also it's not like boring and super long for our guests, right? And inevitably, with any event ever, something always goes wrong. Likewise in business. So how do you pivot and adapt when stuff like that happens, both in business and like, I'm sure that those are all skills that you learned in the hospitality industry, oh, the food's not going to be done on time, or there's extra people we weren't planning for being there. To use the example of my wedding, there was a huge windstorm the morning of my wedding, and there was like a tree down over the road on the way to get to the venue.
Sick. Yeah.
So I would guess that you are probably an expert in like a quick pivot. And I would love to hear more about how that plays into what you do now.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And you are speaking to another recent bride. So I actually also just got married. So not only was it my job, but then I got to be the bride's side. And so all of these things are ringing very true. But I think it's how you build that, right? So I'm going to stay on the wedding side for just a second. Like I would never have built a timeline that didn't create space for mistakes, changes, for pauses, right? So if I think that, we want to have dinner at 5:30, well, technically I could be filling water glasses at 5:15, but I would never have built it that way. We're going to fill water glasses at 4:45 so that there is time for, what if we spill and we have to reset an entire table? We are prepping for those things. And the same thing happens when we're setting goals, when we're talking about these things for business, right? Is we all know that goal setting we're guessing. It's the same with like forecasting and budgeting and all of those things. We are taking our best educated guess, knowing that there needs to be room for variable. And so I think it is setting people up with that mentality. And I work really hard to tell people, like, this is a guide. This is a roadmap. This is helping us see where we're trying to get. But I mean, if you think about it as an actual roadmap, if you plug into your navigation, this is where I'm going, you're going to that same spot. But sometimes it pops up saying, accident, do you want to reroute, right? And I have to choose, no, I want to stay on this path, even though it might take me a little bit longer, or I am going to reroute. I'm going to pick another direction. I'm going to pivot a little bit and get back on track up here. And so I like to use a lot of those words when I'm working with a client to say, like, we are building this so you understand where you're going, but we also know that we are not glued to this. Sometimes things are going to change. That's why you have a coach. That's why we have conversations. We talk about it. We make a decision that's what's best for them, what's best for their business, and then know that we're not changing that end goal. That we've set, that we're not moving. We're not saying, oh, we're no longer going to this restaurant, we're going to this restaurant. We're still going to that spot, but we might take a little bit of a different route to get there.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy too, because I feel like you've said a few things about goal setting that really stuck out to me. First of all, that like the 5 emails aren't the goal, right? I've had conversations with a content strategist on this podcast where she says the reason why people think that creating content doesn't work for them is because they treat the content as the goal. They say, I want to post 25 blog posts in a year or 1 email a week or whatever. And then they say, oh, well, I did that and it didn't work for me. And the problem is that what does work for me mean? Like, that's what the goal is. The goal is new clients booked or new traffic to your website or whatever. So I love that you said that. And I also think it's so hard as an online business owner to set goals because of exactly what you're saying. We get in our head about, I don't know what the next 6 months are going to look like, or what if this happens, or what if that happens. For me, I'm a mom and a military spouse. So it's always in the back of my head of like, what if we end up moving, or what if we decide to have another baby, or like these huge life things that really can derail my business and all these great plans I have for myself. And I think that's where having a coach and having somebody to support you in the way that you do your clients can be so helpful in like keeping the train on the tracks in that way, similar to why you would hire an event planner, for example. So
Absolutely.
we've talked a good bit about systems and planning and all of the, I would say, more like tangible things of the ways that you support your clients. I want to talk more about team culture and like how hospitality plays into that. You mentioned that at one point you managed a team of 50. Now, how many people are on your team in your business right now?
There's 6 of us total.
Okay, there's 6 of you total. And then I would assume that many of your clients have teams also. Is your brand feeling a little off? Like your visuals, messaging, and your overall vibe just are not lining up with where your business is headed? You probably don't need another pretty logo. You actually need a solid strategy behind your brand. That's exactly what we'll build together inside the Standout Brand Strategy session, a one-on-one deep dive into your brand foundation so that you can finally show up with clarity, consistency, and confidence. And if you're thinking about working with Specht & Co. on branding or web design, this is your first step for every single project that we do together. Clients who have gone through this process have tripled their audience size, doubled their revenue, and raised their rates by 30% or more. Use the link in the show notes to book your session, and don't forget to enter code SFBPOD at checkout to save $100.
It's a good mix. We have some that have teams and some that are solopreneurs.
People is, I feel like, hands down the hardest part of business. And I think the reason why is because many of us get into business not knowing that that's like going to be a thing that we have to deal with. So in my case, I went to school for graphic design. I like worked at an ad agency, did all the things, and then was like, I'm going to go become a freelancer. And now all of a sudden I have this business with people who work for me, and that was never anywhere on my radar that I was going to need to know how to be a good leader, how to create culture, how to build a team, any of that stuff. And so then I think a lot of us just kind of like wing it and don't really do that great of a job because we don't even know what we need to know. So what advice would you give somebody about how to, I guess, be more hospitable in the way that they're building a team and like more intentional about what culture they're creating?
Yeah, I mean, great question, because it's hard, right? And especially if, I will say for me, it feels really natural because that's what my passion is and what I've always wanted to do. But for people, like your example is great, is like, I never even thought about that piece, and now I'm in it. And how do I do that? And I think it's asking the question is step one, because you're creating an awareness about it. And so we like to think about things a lot in like we operate under 3 pillars essentially. And so it's awareness, structure, and habit are our 3. And so step one is becoming aware of it. So realizing I want to be better at this, or I'm not doing this great, and how can I improve? Like that is step one. Now we're going to build the structures on how to do that. And I think it's a great example that you kind of led off this interview with was, when I go on vacation, this is how I want to feel. And if we can figure out what are the ways to bring that feeling into the team culture, what are the ways that I can make that same employee feel the same experience at work that I feel when someone's bringing me a drink at the pool, like, and what makes you feel that way? Is it being noticed? Is it being seen? Is it that they're anticipating my need before I ask for it? Like dialing into what are those experiences and feelings that I love, and then how can I create that experience for my team to have that same feeling, I think is crucial. We also talk a lot about, so there's a tool called the SDI, the Strengths Deployment Inventory, and it is essentially it's kind of like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC, and it teaches you about the motives and the strengths of your team. And so I also think that's something that's really unique. Sometimes with people, we like to create these blanket strategies. So everyone operates under the same need. Everyone just wants to be heard, and then they'll be happy. And it's like, well, not everyone has the same way of feeling seen or feeling appreciated. Or, some people really want to be thanked publicly. Other people don't. They hate that. I don't want to be called out. Let's just talk in our one-on-one. So spending time to put the energy into understanding your team, understanding what motivates your team, and realizing that we're going to treat them a little bit differently. I would assume it's probably the same. I don't have children, but with children, right? Like we can't you don't reward both or all three of your children the same way because they are motivated by different things. One, you might tell them they get to play, so have TV screen time after dinner, and another one gets dessert. If you told the other one, like, they don't really care. It's not that motivating to them. Like, our employees are the same, and so are our guests in hospitality. If I'm working at the front desk, I can't have the same solution for every single guest. They want different things. They feel differently. And it seems like people respond so much clearer to that in like their personal lives. They know that. They know that their friends have different needs. But then at work, we jump to this blanket and it's like, oh, I can just use the same thing on everyone and it works. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other example that I thought of when you were like, people want to be like treated or rewarded differently was like at a restaurant. Some people want the waiter who's going to like sit and chit chat with them and like really build a relationship and whatever. And some people are like, no, for example, like talk to people 24/7 at work. If I'm going out to dinner, I basically want you to bring my food and leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those are like perfectly valid and acceptable, but to give good service, like you need to take the time to figure that out so that you can deliver that.
And when you don't, it's really poorly received, right? Like how many times have you had the waitress that just won't read the room and won't stop talking? And you're like, please, like I gave you my order, please walk away. And that is really frustrating if that's your boss, right? Like if you're very driven by performance and you're like, I'm just trying to finish this task so I can get it to you. I don't want to spend 20 minutes telling you about my weekend. That's very different. Someone like me, yes, I am driven by performance, but I'm very relationship driven. So if I go into a meeting and I was on vacation and my boss doesn't ask me how it was, I'm like instantly hurt. Like I'm like, I was out for a week in Hawaii and you don't even want to ask me how it's going. You just want to immediately jump into work. Like that for me is I need something different, right? And that's not right or wrong.
No, and I think to that point specifically, it's important to remember that like if we don't tell people what we're thinking or how we're feeling, and I think this is on both the like quote boss side and the employee side, they will assume, and likely they will assume wrong. So your boss doesn't ask you how your vacation was, and then you're probably over here spiraling about like, oh my gosh, he hates me, I'm about to get fired, like what's going on, what did I do to make him mad? And like it's not about that at all. It's just that he couldn't be bothered to take like the 5 minutes to be like, Melissa would really appreciate if I showed interest in her life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes it comes down to your point to asking. So I was actually just talking to a colleague this morning and I'm on a new project right now with another coach on our team. So I'm actually like learning from him. And I was telling her, I was like, I keep reminding him, I want you to tell me that I'm doing good. Like when I leave a meeting and then we have a one-on-one after, I want you to say like, hey, I was impressed that you kept up today, or that feeds me. And I have no issue sharing that with him. And now he does it, right? Like now when we leave and we have a one-on-one to discuss it, he leads off by complimenting something specific that I did in the meeting. Or if I worked on a document and send it over, he'll tell me right away, like, this looks great, and then give the feedback. And for me, being outside of my comfort zone and trying something new, I need that reassurance to feel like I'm on the right track. Now, before he wouldn't do that. And he would tell me like, no news is good news. If I don't say something is wrong, that means that you're doing great. And I'm like, I hear you, but that doesn't help me. Like, I really need you to tell me that I am doing a good job. And so by me sharing that need, I'm now receiving it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just as much our job to share what will help us as it is for our bosses and leaders to match it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like love languages, right?
Yeah.
Like I get the like, no news is good news. Like if you're messing up, I'll tell you. Like that in my brain makes perfect sense. But also if I think about it, after a while, I kind of would be like, okay, like I could use a pat on the back. Like throw me a bone here, man. Like, and I don't know. I feel like as women in particular, and also just as entrepreneurs where we're so like scrappy and gritty and like we can just do everything ourselves, it is hard to get comfortable asking for what we need.
It is.
In that way. And then on the flip side, as a boss or a supervisor or a leader or whatever, I think it can be, I don't know, tricky to navigate. Like, okay, so you go to that person and you say, okay, here's what I need from you. That's a big responsibility on them of like, okay, this person was vulnerable enough to share that with you. You like better deliver.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where we can lean into tools. So in our line, that's where we use the SDI and we help our teams do these things. So we're not just putting the responsibility on one person or the other. It's, hey, now you have these tools. They're accessible. I mean, the SDI you can literally pull up in a Zoom call and have on your screen on the side. These are this person's feature, like what they're looking for. And it's these reminders, or you can, it'll tell you like, if you're delivering bad news, these are the ways to do it. It's very specific in how it helps you understand your team. And so, we try to help foster these softwares and systems and solutions that make it easier, because it is, yeah, if you have 50 employees and you are trying to remember, okay, what does this person need for me to make them feel successful? Like, that's not sustainable. And we know that. And I would never be encouraging that. But it's, what are ways that you can understand that and still help people to feel seen?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you used the example of kids earlier. Like, I have 2 children and have to like actively remind myself, like, okay, these things work better with this one and these things work better with this one. So yeah, if you have a team of like 50 plus employees, you can't keep that all in your head. Like, you have to systematize it. I know of a couple people who will systematize their like networking reach out and like sending people gifts for their birthdays and whatever. And they're like, oh, everyone thinks I just magically remember their birthday, but it's in Asana. Like, my project management tool is reminding me. And people get weird about that. And they're like, oh, well, it's going to feel like not personal and whatever. I am telling you, and I think that you would agree with me, like, somebody would rather have you get that stuff right and be using a system than just like drop the ball completely. Like, they're not going to care that you had some
100%.
notes on how they best like to receive feedback.
I know my mom's birthday is September 13th. I still get a reminder a week before telling me like, hey, it's time to go put a card in the mail because she lives in California and you don't want to be late. Like, that's me setting myself up for success. That doesn't mean that I don't care or don't like. So I think if you think about things in that lens, you're not cheating a system by getting a reminder.
No.
You're putting in the energy to want to make people feel seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is, if anything, like, you're putting in more effort to make sure that you're treating people how you want to be treating them. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like all the stuff that we're talking about with like leadership and employees and stuff, we all do kind of second nature with our clients. Like, it's very important to us that we communicate well and that we make sure that they're like feeling the love and that we keep them in the loop about things and all of that stuff, that like they know that they're priority number one to us. Similar to in like, for example, like the food service and hospitality industry, the whole like customer is always right trope. It is so backwards, I guess is the right way to put it to me, that we don't do that with our employees and our team members. When arguably, I think a team member is more important than a client. Like, they're going to help you grow your business, or if things go sideways, like they could really do some harm to your business, versus, not to like make this sound any sort of like negative way, but like, you can go find another client. But if you have a really great team that feels really well taken care of, or not, I feel like makes a way more significant impact on your business than a single client being super happy or 80% happy.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need me here if that's your soapbox, because that's my soapbox, and one team's, and I couldn't agree with you more.
So how do you help your clients kind of shift their perspective on that a little bit? Because I think the like going out of our way to keep our clients happy is so ingrained in us. And then we think our team members are here, like, I don't know, this isn't really the way I want to say this, but like, they're here to serve us. And it's just, I think it's a hard like thing to untangle in our brains.
Yeah, it is. And, so a lot of when one team started out, we were really focused in the like life sciences and healthcare industry. That was where our founder's background is. And we spent a lot of time talking about the toll of speaking instead of a guest, it was a patient, right? And so it's that if you think about hospitals or nursing or any of those, or even in manufacturing of drugs, it's like we're always pushing this message of like, well, do it for the patient, do it for the guest, push a little bit harder. And so I think truly, depending on who you're talking to, it is a different conversation. But in some ways, if you are talking to someone who's very, business driven and wants to talk financials, it's looking at the cost of turnover. To your point, like you can get another client and they're going to pay you for the job that you're doing, but how much money are you spending in the people that are leaving because they're feeling unhappy, they're feeling burnt out, they're feeling unseen, all of those things. So that's one direction to go, is just looking at it from a financial place of, you're not making smart business choices by leading this way. But I think if most leaders are humans that they don't want to make people feel that way. And I think it's a lack of awareness and a lack of realization that that's the way that we're driving. And, I'm sure that you agree with this a lot from a brand place. Like when we're working with these companies, we step way back and go back to, what's the culture that you're building? Do you have values? What are they? And are all of the systems and processes and things that you're doing being fed by those values? We do a whole audit on that. And if the answer is no, then we got to start over. And we have to really think about, okay, well, what's missing? What's wrong? Are the values not right? And 9 times out of 10, the values are right. They chose those because that's the way they want to operate. And so then we're holding up the mirror saying, well, you're saying that you value communication, but nowhere in this process are you having any internal communication or getting any feedback from your team members. So let's fix that. Let's make changes. Let's, understand why. How did it get this way? And dialing that in. But that takes a person that wants that. And, we are very direct when we're doing customer listening and figuring out if someone's, quoting and all of these things, discovery calls. Like we are very direct that if you become a client of ours, you have to have a learning mindset, a growth mindset. You have to be willing to want to make changes. We can't come in and work with someone that says it's the way it's always been. Like that's not gonna work. And so, it does take a special person to say, this matters to me, and I see that we might have to slow down to ramp up. We might have to spend a little bit of time not producing at our highest to fix these things to then be able to soar in where we're going.
Yeah, you said 2 things that I just had my brain lighting up about values and feedback. So brand values, when I'm going through brand strategy with a client, are one of the things that I really get on a soapbox about, because I see so frequently business owners saying, oh, my values are the examples I use are kindness and authenticity, and then the end. And I always challenge them to dig a lot deeper and be like, okay, well, if that's really what you want to choose, then fine. But tell me what that means. How does that show up in the day-to-day of running your business? Frankly, I feel like kindness and authenticity, so being nice and telling the truth, basically, is the bare minimum. That's not something that's going to differentiate you. For me, for example, one of my core values is proactive communication. And so on the client side, that means every week we send an email and we update them and say, here's a status update on your project, basically. But then on the internal side, it also means that when a team member sends me a Slack message, I'm going to respond to them same day. And that they know that they're always welcome to give me feedback on what I can do better as the leader of the business. And I think we don't think about that side of it enough of yes, how do we embody these values with our clients, but also how do we embody them internally? I know everyone listening probably has had an experience where they've had a job that they felt like the people they were working for just did not care about them. And once that switch flips for you and kind of the glass is broken and you're like, oh, this company is not concerned about me at all, I don't think you can ever recover from that.
I agree.
So I remember so distinctly my 2 times this has happened to me in exit interviews from jobs. The first was my agency job that I was so excited to get when I graduated college and was this is my the dream big girl job. And I made it 11 months and I was dealing with extreme burnout. And during the exit interview, the HR gal who was interviewing me said, I want to say almost verbatim, we had no idea that you were unhappy here. And I was like, well, where have you been? If you had no idea, it's because you haven't been listening. And then the second experience I had that was when I left my last 9 to 5. That was overall a better job experience. But I remember them asking, what are things we can do to improve or whatever. And I gave them a few things that were very genuine and honest and well thought out. And it was just immediately clear to me that they didn't really care to hear it. And I was like, well, why'd
you ask the
why are you
question?
wasting my time? Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we as small business owners with like fewer team members, for sure, those companies had like in the hundreds to thousands of employees. Most of my listeners have like 1 to maybe 5 or 6 team members. How can we do that better and like encourage our people to give us feedback and make sure that they actually feel heard so that they're not like shutting down and being like, oh, Morgan doesn't actually care about me. Like I'm going to kind of check out a little bit.
Yeah. Ask for it and listen, right? So, and also I think leading by example. So being a leader that gives feedback, is really helpful. And then also, like I said, asking for it. So setting the example of, do you have any thoughts or any feedback on how we are doing this? Like, I think creating an environment, when we also talk about culture and we talk about these values and standards, like it's using the language right very regularly. And so we are constantly using our value language on purpose to remind people that they exist, to lead with them, to guide, let our values guide us, and then also to make sure that people feel them. And so we used to have a weekly meeting. It's been a little while since this was happening, but when we were really growing the business and building the culture, we met weekly. And we asked every single time for people to say, what value do you feel you're living the highest this week? And what's an example of how you did that? We used that language specifically so that we were starting to really make sure that we were feeling it in the work that we were doing and then giving each other feedback on those things. And so I think just fostering an environment where that is the normal feedback can be really hard to receive if you've never gotten it before. And now all of a sudden you're turning in a project and someone's telling you they don't like it. That can be really difficult. But if you're in an environment where you're regularly receiving feedback, I expect every time I go have a meeting with someone on my team and share something, I expect them to have something to tell me that can improve it, because that's our culture. We're always helping each other grow and learn and fostering an environment for that. And so honestly, if someone doesn't have something to say, I'm like, what aren't you telling me? Because there is something, right? Like you can always improve a little bit, or the feedback is, it's great. Like, and sometimes that's what it is too, is like, wow, you really nailed this. And I have no notes, but that's still receiving feedback. And so I think just building an environment where it's constantly happening is the best way to move forward on.
Yeah. And feedback is another thing that I really have strong opinions about in business. And I think as like a done for you service provider myself, I'm really comfortable asking for feedback about like the service I provide, if that makes sense. So like nobody's ever going to hurt my feelings by saying they didn't like the logo I designed them. Like I have dealt with that so many times. It's part of the process. Like it's fine. But if I had a team member say some constructive feedback about like the way I'm running my business or how I'm working with them, I would probably have more feelings about that. So I think that's where like it gets a little harder to open ourselves up to that. One of the things that I have found that helps to get like real answers from people is not to say, is there anything I could do better? But like, what can I do better? Because I know there are things. I feel like when we say, is there anything, it's implied that like there might not be anything. And I know that there's always something. So I feel like that kind of encourages people to be like, just pick one thing that you think that I could make like a small improvement.
I think there's also like an unwritten rule of feedback that says that it's supposed to be like 3 positives to 1 negative. And so it's like find 3 things. So, if someone's presenting a slide deck to me and wants my feedback, like I'm telling them 3 things that I really liked throughout it to 1 thing that I think could be improved. And I don't think that's a hard rule that you need to follow, but I do think if it's something that you're new to the world of feedback, it is a helpful way to feel like I'm giving them 3 really great compliments before I'm giving them something that could be worked on, and it's a little bit easier to lean into that.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit ago, but I do think it's important to remember that like feedback can be positive. Like we think of it as like, tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I need to improve, but also, if we're using the slide deck example, if you were like, some of your positive feedback was, oh my gosh, like everything was really easy to read and like visually engaging, for example. I think it's easy to think of that as just, oh, you're just like being nice or just placating them or whatever. But you're telling them like, do more of that. That's something you did really well, like double down on that. And when we focus too much on the constructive feedback and don't give the positive feedback, I think it's like a huge, huge missed opportunity. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that was such a great conversation. I feel like we touched on a lot of things as far as, hospitality in the way of how we treat our clients and our employees, some systems. That feedback piece was really, really important. So I think there's a lot that folks will be able to learn from this episode. I really appreciate your time and you being here. Can you let us know, Melissa, how we can connect with you and One Team Partners?
Yeah, absolutely. One Team is we spend most of our time on Instagram from the social side. And so if anyone wants to connect with us, we are oneteampartners.thrive, and one is spelled out ONE. And then I, for this podcast, would love to throw an offer out there that if anyone is interested in a discovery consulting call with me, so it would be an hour call to sit down and just kind of chat through what are some things that you're struggling with, what's some feedback that you might receive, and anything in that world, you can just email me directly. And so that's Melissa@oneteampartners.com, and just let me know that you found me on this podcast and we'll get something scheduled. So I would love that too.
Awesome. And tell us real quick, who is the perfect person for that consult call? Like, what type of business do they run? Where are they at in their business? So that hopefully somebody can listen and say, oh, that's me.
Yeah. I always say our ideal client falls into two buckets. We really have like two solid target markets. And so bucket one is someone who is trying to get to the next level, whatever that looks like, whether it's just starting and trying to really build a foundation, whether it's I've had my business for 5 years and now I'm trying to scale up to the next level of what that looks like and don't really know how, specifically from an operations and strategy place. That is someone that we love working with. That's like our dream. Industry is not important because from my side of what I'm doing with you, it's the same. You are getting into your business because you're really good at the technical piece, and it's the leadership and strategy piece that needs some help. So that's kind of bucket one. And then the other bucket is working with clients that are feeling almost the opposite. I am doing too much. I need to either scale this down or close my business because it's not sustainable for me. I'm so burnt out. Having all these symptoms of working too much, I can't find balance and I don't know what to do. Those are clients that we also really like to come in and help you create processes, help you streamline, figure out, am I doing things that are actually of value? What can I stop doing? Really honing in on that piece is really effective as well. We kind of say there's two options, and we enjoy working with both.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, all of those links that Melissa mentioned will be in the show notes. Thank you again so much for being here, and we will see you on the next episode of the Six Figure Brand. Thanks for tuning in to the Six Figure Brand Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to rate the show and leave a review on whatever app you're listening on. And as a thank you, I'll send you coffee on me. Yes, I'm serious. As a smaller show for now, you taking the time to do this makes a huge impact on how we can reach more people and how I can continue to create this content for free. When you take a screenshot of your review, follow and tag me on Instagram @SpectandCo. I'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. As always, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources I mentioned during the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.